Schizophrenics, what is the scariest hallucination, visually or audibly, that you have ever experienced? That night in the hallway. Back in college, I had a buddy who turned out to have schizophrenia, though at the time, I had no idea. One night, maybe around 11 or midnight, we were just chilling in his dorm room. It was quiet, kind of late, and we were just hanging out, not doing much. After a while, he stood up and said he needed to use the bathroom. He walked over to the door, opened it, and just froze there. I could tell something had him stuck. He kept staring down the hallway, like he was trying to figure out what he was looking at. Then he turned back to me and said, "Hey, come here a sec. Does anything seem off to you?" So I got up and walked over, looked out into the hallway. To me, it looked totally normal. It was lit up like it always was, nothing strange going on. I told him, "Nah man, looks fine to me." He stayed right there at the doorway and asked, "Do you hear anything?" I said no, and I really didn't, everything was quiet. But he told me he could hear something, like someone crying, or maybe two people arguing, only it sounded muffled, like it was coming from far away but still close enough to hear. And then he said something that really caught me off guard. He said the hallway looked completely black to him. Not just dark, not a little dim, he said it was pitch black, like someone had shut off all the lights. But I was standing right next to him, looking at the same hallway, and to me, it was just as lit up as always. By now, I could see he was shaking. And I will not lie, I was scared too. At that point, I had no idea he was dealing with a mental illness. I did not even think he knew it himself. We were both pretty shaken up. It felt like something serious was happening, and I just did not understand it. So I ended up walking him down the hallway to the bathroom. He was still nervous and said he could hear someone crying somewhere out there. After that, I stayed in his room for the rest of the night. I figured he just needed someone there. For a while, I thought maybe he was just messing with me, trying to freak me out or something. But not long after that night, he started seeing a therapist and got on medication. That is when I realized the whole thing had been real for him. It was not a joke or a trick. That night was frightening, not just for me, but for him especially. It was the moment I first saw how real his struggle was. That first time I saw them. Let me start by saying this. What I deal with is called psychosis, not full-blown schizophrenia. That is what the doctors told me. I guess my symptoms do not fit neatly into one box, or maybe they are not severe enough to be labeled as schizophrenia. But I still see and hear things that are not real. And I am not ashamed to admit that some of those moments have scared me so badly, I have literally wet myself in fear. I cannot even begin to imagine how tough it must be for folks who have it worse. Anyway, the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, hands down, was the first time I actually saw something that was not there. Not just hearing voices, which I had gotten kind of used to by then. This was different. It was the first time I had a visual hallucination, and I will never forget it for as long as I live. I was in the 10th grade, sitting in class like any normal day. By that point, I had already been hearing voices for a while. I did not tell anyone. I figured I was just weird or something, but I was starting to live with it. It was becoming part of my daily life. That day, I asked the teacher if I could go to the bathroom, and when I stepped out into the hallway, that is when it happened. There was a man standing there. He was right in front of me, maybe 20 feet away, just facing my direction. But the thing is, he had no face. Nothing. Just smooth skin where his eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. I froze. I thought maybe my vision was off or something, so I blinked a few times and shook my head, trying to clear it. When I looked again, he was gone. Just like that. The hallway was dead silent, and there was nowhere for him to go. I did not hear any footsteps, no doors closing, nothing. But he had vanished. I remember thinking it was strange, but I tried to laugh it off. I even told myself, guess now I am seeing things too. I tried to act like it was no big deal, even though it was eating at me. So I kept walking and made my way to the bathroom. But when I got there, he was back. He was standing right in the doorway, same blank face, same creepy stillness. I stopped in my tracks. At first, I was more curious than scared. I thought maybe it was just a guy wearing a mask or some weird prank. So I asked him politely if he could move aside and let me in. Right then, another student came walking out of the bathroom. He looked at me funny and asked who I was talking to. I opened my mouth, but I could not come up with anything to say. And then, he just walked right through the faceless guy like he was not even there. Did not flinch, did not react. Just kept walking. I was standing there completely speechless. I could feel my hands starting to shake. The kid walked off without saying anything else, and the faceless man stepped to the side, like he was letting me pass. I walked around him slowly, giving him as much space as I could. I did not take my eyes off him for a second. I got inside the bathroom, and for a moment I thought maybe it was over. But then this girl walks in behind me. At first, I was just going to tell her she had the wrong restroom, since I am a guy, but as soon as I looked at her, I saw it. She did not have a face either. And now there were two of them. Both standing there, looking right at me, or at least I think they were. They started walking toward me, not saying a word. That is when the fear really hit me. I turned and rushed into one of the stalls, slammed the door shut, and just lost it. I sat there crying, not just because I was scared, but because that was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong with me. I did not leave that stall until someone from the school came in and convinced me to come out. After that, things were never really the same. I still see those two sometimes, even now. I have moved out of that town, finished school, built a new life. But they still show up. They never speak. They never touch me. They just watch. And even though I know now that they are not real, that first time? It was real enough to break something inside me. The sniper night. It happened on a Friday night. I was just sitting on the couch, flipping through channels on the television. Not doing anything special. I had a flashlight sitting on the coffee table from earlier, and I picked it up, started fiddling with it while I watched TV, just absent-minded stuff, really. But out of nowhere, things took a sharp turn. Suddenly, I was deep into a hallucination. Full force. I heard voices outside, whispering, moving through my backyard. In my mind, it was a team of elite special forces sneaking around back there, getting into position. I waved the flashlight around the room without thinking, just playing with it, but they must have seen the light through the window. That is when everything spiraled. In the hallucination, they took that flashlight beam as a threat. They thought it was a tactical light mounted on a weapon. Next thing I know, I hear them calling for me to come out, telling me to surrender. It felt like a full SWAT team response. I honestly believed they were all around my house with rifles trained on me. So I opened the door and got down on my hands and knees right there on the porch. It was pitch dark outside, and I was crying, begging them not to shoot. I had my hands behind my head, knees on the cold wood, heart pounding like a drum. I must have been out there for 2 hours, not moving, barely breathing, trying to convince them I was not a threat. In my mind, I could feel them watching me through their scopes, fingers resting on the triggers. I believed every second of it. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that they had made up their minds, that I was too dangerous to let go. Then, in the hallucination, they shot me. I laid there on the porch, fully convinced I had just died. I felt the impact, felt my body go numb, and then slowly started crawling back inside, dragging myself along the floor like I was bleeding out. I picked up my phone and called my mother. I told her I had been killed by a Special Forces unit, and that I just wanted her to know before I passed. Of course, she did not believe me, but she did realize I was in a bad place. She started talking me through it, gently bringing me back down to reality. But that was not the end of it. She told me I needed to go to the emergency room, and she stayed on the phone with me the entire time while I drove there. Now keep in mind, I was still hallucinating the whole way. When I got to the hospital and sat in the waiting room, I heard the supposed leader of that Special Forces team chatting casually with the nurse at the front desk. I was absolutely certain he had followed me there, that he knew exactly where I was, and he was just waiting for the right moment to finish the job. Luckily, a doctor came to see me before anything else could happen. He could tell something was way off, but I do not think he quite knew how to handle it. So he gave me 2 milligrams of Ativan and then sent me on my way. I was still caught in the hallucination, but now I was floating a bit thanks to the medication. The drive home was wild. I saw things on the road that I cannot even describe. Lights, shapes, shadows darting across my path. But none of it scared me anymore. By the time I got back to my house, the Ativan had smoothed the edges of everything. The terrifying images turned playful, almost dreamlike. The rest of the weekend was strange, but not frightening. The hallucinations stuck around, but they were softer, less threatening. I saw odd things, but I could laugh at them. Still, that Friday night, the one with the snipers, that left a scar. You cannot really explain what it feels like to believe that trained shooters have you in their sights for 2 solid hours. That kind of fear stays with you. Dreams, déjà vu, and that lingering fear. I am not saying I have it figured out, or that I am trying to self-diagnose, but I guess this stuff has just always lingered in the back of my mind. Mental illness runs in my family, no getting around that. I have 2 aunts who are both schizoaffective and bipolar, and on top of that, another aunt and my brother have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder too. So it is not like this kind of thing is foreign to me. It is something I have always known was part of our lives. And maybe because of that, I have always kept a close eye on myself. I do not think I am schizoaffective or anything like that, but there are moments that make me wonder. Not in a panicked way, just this quiet, nagging thought that maybe one day I might start showing stronger symptoms, or that something might shift in my brain. It is honestly kind of terrifying. One of the biggest things I notice is how vivid my dreams can get. I mean, they are so real that sometimes I wake up and it takes me a few minutes to realize I am not still in them. And what is even stranger is how often those dreams seem to line up with things that happen later on, like déjà vu, but stronger. Let me give you an example. A little while ago, I decided to grow some tomatoes. I had never done it before, but I went out and bought a few pots, filled them up with soil, and planted seeds in each one. I think there were 5 or 6 pots total, each with a few seeds. I watered them, put them out in the sun, and just kind of waited. About 2 weeks later, I had this dream, clear as day, where I walked over to check on the pots and only one of them had anything sprouting. Just a single little green plant pushing up through the dirt. Now, here's the thing. I had never seen a tomato sprout before in my life. I had no clue what it should look like, no reference, nothing. But in the dream, I saw it. The shape, the color, everything. The next morning, I got up and remembered the dream right away. It felt so real. I went outside, and sure enough, there it was. One little sprout, in one pot, just like I saw it in the dream. Same size, same shape. I stood there for a while just staring at it. I could not wrap my head around it. It was not just a coincidence. It felt specific. Like I had somehow known before it happened. And this sort of thing has happened to me more than once. Sometimes it is small stuff, other times it is a whole scene from a dream coming back during the day, sometimes months or even years later. It always stops me in my tracks, like I just stepped into a memory I did not know I had. When I was younger, I had some strange habits too, little tics, I guess you could call them. For example, if I touched something with one finger, I had to touch it with all 10. I could not leave it uneven. If I said something, I would sometimes have to repeat it under my breath, just to make sure it landed right. And numbers, man, numbers messed me up. If something was not even or a multiple of 5, it made me uncomfortable. Like I could not move on until I fixed it. Looking back, it sounds a lot like obsessive-compulsive behavior, but no one really talked about that kind of stuff when I was a kid. It was just quirks, or being sensitive. But it stuck with me, even now. I do not know if any of that means I am heading towards something bigger, or if it is all just part of who I am. Maybe it is harmless. Maybe it is something I should keep an eye on. But I would be lying if I said it does not scare me sometimes. Seeing what some of my family members go through, especially my aunts when their symptoms flare up, makes it feel all too real. I guess I just wanted to talk about it. To say it out loud. Because even though I do not think anything is seriously wrong right now, that fear never really leaves. The one that went silent. Most of what I experience are voices, mostly auditory hallucinations. That is just how it works for me. I have had plenty of disturbing ones over the years, but there is one particular moment that has stayed with me, maybe more than anything else. It started like any other episode. I could feel it coming on, that strange build-up when reality starts to slip. But this time, it was different. One of the voices I had known for a long while, a familiar one, started acting in a way I had never heard before. He was in pain. He cried out for help. Not just background noise or muttering like usual. He was talking directly to me. It sounded like he was dying. And not peacefully either. It was loud, desperate, raw. His voice was full of panic and suffering, like he was being torn apart from the inside out. I could not make sense of it, but I could feel every second of it. He kept screaming, begging me not to let it happen. I tried talking to him, tried to calm him down, even though I knew, deep down, this was all happening inside my head. But it did not matter. In that moment, it felt real. Too real. His cries kept going, getting weaker, more broken. Eventually, I had to be sedated. Whatever was going on in my mind, it had pushed me to the edge. I blacked out. When I finally came to, maybe a full day later, the voice was gone. Just gone. He had vanished. I still hear others. The chorus in my head never fully leaves. But that one, the one who begged and cried as he faded out, he never came back. I do not know what it means. Maybe part of my brain just shut that one down permanently. Maybe it was my mind's way of letting go of something. But it hurt. It hurt more than any of the darker things I have heard. And I have heard some awful stuff. Threats, screams, twisted things no one should hear whispered in their ear. But hearing something I had known for years die right in front of me, that shook me to my core. It was not some creepy monster voice. It was familiar. It was almost human. By the way, yes, I have schizophrenia. Diagnosed and everything. I just do not always lead with that, mostly because of how people tend to react. That is part of why I wanted to share this. Because too many people lump schizophrenia in with multiple personality disorder, or assume it means violence and chaos. It is not like that for most of us. We are not ticking time bombs. We are not possessed or dangerous. We are just trying to get by, usually hoping for a little bit of peace and quiet. Maybe a cup of coffee. Honestly, most days that is the goal. Less noise, more coffee. Some people smoke. I used to. Some days I still want to. But mostly it is just about getting through without too much static in my head. This is the first time I have really talked about that specific hallucination. It is not easy to explain to someone who has never dealt with it. But I figured if there was ever a place to put it out there, this was it. The woman in room 12. I used to care for a